Hey everybody, this is your beloved host of Talking to Dead Guys, Tara Sully. I'm using my one phone call to call you from jail. Yes, I'm in jail. Not for anything nefarious. Before you guys get too excited, I'm in here because I have a bunch of unpaid parking tickets and they finally managed to track me down. Okay? So, I found this chill southern dude in here. I don't know what he's doing in New Brunswick, but he agreed to host the show for me this week because he's out on bail because his kids bailed him out. So, if you guys are wondering why a random southern dude named Jethro Buzzer has taken over the show this week, that would be why. Don't worry if he does a bad job. He told me a deep, dark secret, and I threatened to expose him. I know where he lives. So, anyway, the guard is looking at me funny. I'm gonna go, guys. But enjoy this week's episode of Talking to Dead Guys, hosted by Jethro Buzzer. Okay, I'm hanging up. I'm hanging up.
Hello, folks. Unfortunately, the host of this program, Tara Sully, is unable to join us this evening as she has been taken into police custody for, hot damn, 9 years of unpaid parking tickets. She told me she was 21 years old. How is that even possible? Anyway, she asked me, Jethro Buzzer, a fella she met on the inside, to host a very special episode of Talking to Dead Guys. This time, Talking to Dead Gals instead. Thank you, and I hope y'all enjoy the show. Tonight on Talking to Dead Gals, we explore the works of the incomparable Eliza Haywood, a writer of great works of scandalous amatory fiction, such as Phantomina and The History of Miss Betsy Thoughtless, and The Thorn in the Side of neoclassical sourpusses, such as Alexander Pope. Oh, fuck. Eliza, thank you for joining me. And I must say, you look like $1,000,000 for a gal who's been dead for over 2 centuries.
Oh, why, thank you so much, Mr. Buzzer. It is truly a pleasure to be here.
Let's mosey on into the thick of it right away. In your earlier writings, take Phantomina, for example, first published in 1725, the gal without a name, the heroine, disguises herself as 4 different women to seduce the same feller. Beau Pleasure was his name. Some call it a cautionary tale, while others see a portrayal of a proto-feminist desire for social mobility. I must ask, in your own words, what were you getting at there with this novel, Miss Haywood?
Indeed, Mr. Buzzer, that's right. I would say your latter comment resonates with my intentions more so. The protagonist plays the only hand available to her to engage in deception in disguise so as to gain a modicum of control over her own life, a luxury not afforded to women of my day, unfortunately, or to test a single hypothesis. Will a man love a woman if she changes her outer appearance but not what is within?
And, what was the answer?
Well, I found that he'll love her in fragments, but never as the whole genuine article.
Now, sounds to me like she was making trouble for herself, though I do admire her gumption.
Perhaps, Mr. Buzzer. Yet, was it not the true trouble that in order to act independently in the society of the day, some subterfuge was in order? The lady's adventures did yield consequences, yes, but they provided her with insight rarely afforded to women of her station, so I don't know if I would necessarily say that she was making trouble for herself for no other reason.
By consequences, you must mean that unfortunate business of ending up in a convent.
Precisely. Yet, even in that exile, she maintained some degree of dignity. The lady navigated her disgrace privately, unlike many women of my day whose fates were far more grave, as many ended up in Magdalen laundries, wherein they were made into slaves.
Oh, that is very grim indeed. It is a shame that women were punished so severely for simply having hanky-panky outside of marriage, something that's completely normalized these days. At any rate, your early heroines seem to be far more tragic than those that came after, such as in the history of Miss Betsy Thoughtless. Betsy herself starts as somewhat frivolous, youthfully naive, yet by the end she grows into something more substantial. I procured a quote here to further my point. She had a great deal of wit, but was too volatile for reflection, and as a ship without sufficient ballast is tossed about at the pleasure of every wind that blows, so was she hurried through the ocean of life, just as each predominant passion directed.
Betsy's journey is indeed one of profound transformation. Initially thoughtless, given the name, she rises from frivolity to become a creature that is capable of genuine self-determination and introspection. Allow me, she now saw herself and the hours of her past conduct in their true light. "How strange a creature I have been," cried she. "How inconsiderate with myself. I knew the character of a coquette both silly and insignificant, yet did everything in my power to acquire it." She learns that a life spent solely in pursuit of catching the wandering male gaze is one that is empty. It is a desert in which the female sacrifices her own desires, wants, needs, in order only to be appealing.
That is mighty perceptive of you, Miss Haywood. I've always liked a brainy gal myself, and I've always found it silly that some gals would sacrifice their own passions and goals in order to please a feller, or that some fellers would force their gals to accept a fate that clearly was not meant for them. Now, your own life, Miss Haywood, I wasn't able to dig up too much about you, other than some scandalous rumors that you were the mistress of the poet Richard Savage, a pal of the great Dr. Johnson. You even bore his children, apparently. Can you shed some light on this?
Well, given the fact that I sit across from you now, it seems you were able to dig me up just fine. Scandal, Mr. Buzzer, is a curious thing. Through the mists of time, the records of one's life can be obscured and deformed by muckrakers and sensationalists. In a recent article, Catherine King put it rather well, noting that too much of my biography is deformed by undue aspects for the veracity of sexualizing lampoons by the likes of Savage and Pope, as well as a tendency to cast me as one of my own seduced and abandoned heroines, and I could not have said it better myself, because in true, my dear Mr. Buzzer, much of what passes for my biography, especially the controversial aspects, is merely the fanciful construction of scandalmongers.
Well, you gotta admit, it makes for some mighty interesting storytelling.
Well, that is true, and storytelling, Mr. Buzzer, is of course my trade. But consider this, those same narratives, laden with scandal, also served me. My career was built on the foundations of controversy. I learned very early on, if one could not escape scandal, one must learn to harness it and use it to their advantage.
So, scandal became your ally. Sort of reminds me of this gal, a celebrity. Her father was a rather famous lawyer. That's a long story. Kimberly Kardashian was her name. She made a porno video back in the 2000s with her boyfriend. And suffice to say, now her entire family is filthy rich.
Well, I would like to think that my artistic contributions have much more merit than that of this Kimberly Kardashian person. Would love to sit down and chat with her next, but I do see your point.
Oh, but of course, Miss Haywood, I didn't intend to put you down there with her. You know, she's got nothing on you. Just a somewhat similar situation is all. Anyway, let's circle back to Phantomina once again. We left her in a convent, a mighty sad ending for someone so clever and spirited. Colin Cook, a lecturer at Brandeis University, argues that rather than showing us sovereign, desire-wielding female or male characters, your figurations of embodiment dismantle the representational structure out of which a gendered understanding of power emerges, offering us an opportunity to imagine an alternative social field. That vision emerges from your figuration of embodied, susceptible, non-sovereign subjects that are pushed and pulled by physiological, textual, and environmental forces. In other words, desire and passion are more akin to phantasmal forces that originate outside of ourselves, rather than a feeling that comes from within. Would you agree?
Indeed I would, Mr. Buzzer. Phantomina suffers due to the constraints of her society, and this phantasmal passion possesses her and drives her forward. She's caught between the desire for autonomy and the body's vulnerability to passion and social pressures. In Phantomina, I posit that passions often overwhelm reason, and women in particular are judged harshly for surrendering themselves to these forces, while men are praised and lauded for their sexual conquests.
Well, I reckon that makes sense. Women are judged harshly for the same things that make men heroes at the bar or in the locker room. I suppose some things ain't changed too much. Unlike Phantomina, Betsy don't end up in no convent. Betsy finds her own path. After making some pretty darn foolish decisions early on, she harnesses what little agency she was afforded and fights back against the submissive attitude that she was expected to exude. This is displayed very prominently when she fights back against a libertine making some unsavory advances on her in a stagecoach. A stark difference compared to when Phantomina's protagonist is raped by Beau Pleasure, and she simply says, "My dear Beau Pleasure, your love alone can compensate for the shame you have involved me in. Be you sincere and constant, and I hereafter shall, perhaps, be satisfied with my fate and forgive myself the folly that betrayed me to you." What changed in your mindset here?
It's quite simple, really, Mr. Buzzer. My own observations of society matured. In Miss Betsy Thoughtless, I desired to portray how a woman's character can evolve beyond what was expected of her into rational self-awareness. My works explore the feedback loop among reading, bodies, and texts to show how passion and a knowledge of one's self-relation to the outer world may lead to greater autonomy. Betsy becomes empowered not by succumbing to what is expected of her, but by understanding and mastering herself, which is the most important thing.
Mastering herself, developing autonomy? Sounds like this book is, what's that word? Bildungsroman, a coming-of-age novel. Betsy learns to harness her emotions rather than letting them toss her around like a rag doll. Self-actualization.
Precisely, Mr. Buzzer. Great observation. Over time, my heroines and I learned to speak in our own voices rather than through those who wished to control us.
It's mighty inspiring, Miss Haywood. And now you've got plenty of young folk rediscovering your works, seeing relevance even today. How do you reckon modern readers can benefit from Betsy, Phantomina, or even your own journey?
Well, it sounds like, much to my dismay, might I add, that things haven't changed all too much for women. So my message to modern readers, particularly women, is that it might be important to recognize that society's demands upon them to maintain reputations and restrain passions have hardly vanished. But my heroines demonstrate that scandal, passion, and even mistakes along the way can foster insight and reflection. Rather than submitting to imposed identities, women and men should learn the art of reflection so as to master themselves. Society wishes us to hide our true selves. My heroines teach readers to confront themselves honestly, warts and all.
I would have to agree, Miss Haywood. Phantomina and Betsy's misadventures show conscious explorations of identity within a restrictive society. Your work challenges traditional notions of selfhood, revealing figures who are, as Colin Cook put it, embodied and intensely susceptible to the textual, physiological, and passional environments, as are we all. Well, unfortunately, we're nearly at a time. Miss Haywood, would you care to share any final words with our audience?
Certainly, Mr. Buzzer. Scandal, passion, and even folly are essential aspects of our humanity. Embrace them not with the blind instinct of a beast, but do so consciously. Use them to understand who you really are and refuse to let society dictate who you should be.
Wise words indeed. And thank you, Miss Haywood, for flapping your gums with me this evening. And folks, that's all for tonight. Keep reading, keep reflecting, and don't get no 9-year backlog of parking tickets like Miss Sully. And if and I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and of course, good night.
Parking tickets? Maybe I'll have to write my next novel about this Miss Sully. She sounds like a real controversial character. Thank you again for having me, Mr. Buzzer. This has been a truly unique experience for me. Farewell, everybody, and as my gracious host told me to relay to you, y'all be good now. Have a good night.
You load 16 tons, and what do you get? You get another day older and deeper in debt. St. Peter, don't you call me, 'cause I can't go. I owe my soul to the company store.